with the east-west connector, is there funding for that now?
The funding has not been put together yet. We're in the phase right now that's defining the project, which will put the actual cost to the project out.
Gotcha.
The estimate from the preliminary studies, about $175 million for this corridor, including lots of improvements to the streets and the sidewalks and the connections to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, federal participation, that's extremely important. Hopefully, an application will be going into the federal government in the next several months. The timing on that's dependent on when the new rules are issued about how to do that.
Right.
And then there will be a request made for state funding, metro funding, and then obviously a contributor in the long haul are the fares that are actually charged to use the system.
Gotcha.
But that plan is not in place yet because there are so many factors, including actually defining the system so we know exactly what the cost will be.
Cool. And I've seen some pictures of it, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as if you're on the Jetsons. I mean, it just looks like that kind of a bus, and we'll be looking at pictures there shortly. And so y'all's teams have worked together to come up with the traffic, how this would affect traffic. And here's a question that I don't even know if I've asked you this, Ed. How long would it take to get from, say, the White Bridge area to 5 Points in East Nashville if you utilize the busted BRT?
Yeah, the best way to answer that question right now is it will take you a significantly less amount of time in comparison with what it would take to drive that corridor. We're working on detail. Jeff can talk about the detailed analysis right now. It depends on whether it's rush hour, if it's middle of the day, if it's during a Vanderbilt basketball game or during a Titans football game. But there is no question in the analysis to date that it will take less time, significantly less time, to make that trip in comparison with if you got in your car and tried to make the same trip.
Yeah, and part of the thing we look at that seems like a harmless question, Christie, but it's really not. There's a lot to that, and like some of those different scenarios Ed was laying out. Another thing we have to throw in there too is this corridor continues to be a very primary attractor for continuing levels of high density development, and with that brings new trips. And so we also have to think about how is this proposed transit alternative going to benefit us, not only opening day, whenever that is in the next few years, but also 10 years out and 25 years out. And as this corridor continues to develop, how are we going to move people up and down West End, Harding Road, Broadway, Main Street? We look at that from a traffic standpoint and see very few options. One is widening. That's been the general approach in this area. In this corridor, that becomes a pretty tough proposition.
Yeah. Big time. Big time.
It's not very realistic to think we can add more lanes to West End Avenue in this area. So the other thing we can look at doing is making some operational improvements. That would help some, but to continue the people moving capacity that we need to see in this corridor, given its stature as a primary development location in Nashville, we need to be thinking differently than we have in the past. And I think that's where this type of transit comes in.